Welcome. Manifesting with Meg, conversations with the extraordinary Kendra Rinaldi. It's episode 142 of my season 8, Stay in Joy. And I get to share with you the amazing host of Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between. How are you tonight, Kendra?
I'm great because I'm with you, Meg. I'm with
I'm
you,
so
and
excited.
that makes it great.
I heard someone say at a conference recently, those are the sunshining people, and you are one of those. And it's so fascinating because your podcast is called, the grief, gratitude, and the gray in between, which is just completely on point because it shows how beautiful the contrasts of life are and the gratitude we have for those things. I want to welcome all of you once again to episode 142. As long as you are alive, you might as well. And I want to introduce you all to Kendra Rinaldi. She is the creator and host of the podcast Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between, as well as an intuitive grief guide. She has some powerful chats with guests who've been through it all, and they're sharing how they found growth and healing in some tough times. Together, she'll explore the depth of grief and find ways to help you navigate that journey in a way that brings peace, which I think is something that we all could benefit from. So, once again, welcome to tonight's show. Thank you, Kendra, for joining me here. Um, you know, I love the theme stay in joy. When you're experiencing grief, which you can't make it out of this world without experience,
Absolutely. Mhm.
how do you find the joy?
I think that the joy is can be always there
Mm.
amidst the grief. It's like we feel in general, I tend to think we compartmentalize. We cannot compartmentalize really each emotion. They don't have to go like in these little boxes and that you only pull one out at a time.
Mm.
That's not how life is. They can all kind of show up, sometimes some more than the others. They're not like either or. So that for me has been something that has been very clear as I've been experiencing grief. Just to kind of just even put a little bit of perspective, even the day my mom died 8.5 years ago. The day she died, we laughed so much that evening that not that that we were the moment after she passed, there were moments in which we were joyful. Like we really, truly were joyful because in our year of having witnessed her go through so much suffering, there was this joy of knowing that she no longer was in pain. Again, that was in that moment, right? Of course, there were a lot of other waves of emotions later on, but in that moment of such profound sorrow, there was also joy, like moments of laughter within that one that she had died exactly how she wanted,
Mm.
with all of us around, with her friends, with it was just like how magical that that it had occurred how she wanted. So there was this joy because of that.
Yeah.
So I really don't see it as an either or. They really do can go hand in hand, and the same with gratitude. That's why my podcast is called Grief and Gratitude. They can go hand in hand.
Now, at this time in this world today, we all are dealing with a lot of emotions. And I think that especially coming out of the pandemic is still impacting many people. It's shining a light on the fact that people are dealing with mental health issues and then they might be grieving the life that they thought they had before. How do you approach after 5 years of this podcast, at this as a service and offering to the community who may be suffering at the time, and you can offer some rays of hope?
I think that it's just knowing that when we hear stories of other people that have gone through really hard situations, it gives us perspective and it gives us hope. It's like, okay, it's not a matter of comparison. We're not trying to compare. Everybody comes with their own, lore, upbringing, life that makes you who you are right now. And therefore, how we each navigate our journeys and our difficulties and our wins, our everything is very unique to us and our own, perspectives. But when you're hearing someone else share their story,
Mm.
it gives you that glimpse of hope. Oh my gosh, like this person's child died and they're still standing.
Yeah.
This person's partner died and they're still standing. This person lost everything, all their belongings in a fire, and they're still standing. There is so much hope when you see and hear these stories of others going through that. So that is really like the purpose of the podcast, is to just give that little bit of hope and companionship to someone else that's going through that, and also validate what you're feeling in that moment. That, I think, is just so important.
So going into your 5th year now of all these stories, how many have you recorded thus
Oh
far?
my. So I'm just, let's see, I'm launched 193 episodes.
Oh.
Yeah. But yeah, so, and it's pretty much almost all of those are interviews. So I mean, I have interviewed about 200 people.
What is your biggest takeaway that keeps you going?
Because it is just, I do learn something from each person every single time. And I do learn something even just of myself, or I hear it just differently. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that approach. Oh, I see how that can be. And it just sits differently, because in the 5 years that I've been doing this, I've also kept on growing and changing as well. So yeah, every single time I learn something about them, or about something about grief, that I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I can see how that is.
So tell us a little bit about your journey.
So one of my first episode that I did was actually talking about grief occurring even in happy moments of life. So I want to start with that part, that actually that was very important for me to be clear that my podcast was not going to be only about changes and transitions that were sad that caused grief. There's sometimes even these really amazing moments, and one of those for me was even becoming a mom.
Yeah.
In the journey of becoming a mother was one of the first times I noticed the grief of identity and losing who I was and then who I was becoming, and how I incorporated these into my life in a way that years later, when I finally like realized, I'm like, because I was still searching. I'm like, where is she? Where am I?
Yeah.
Where am I? So that was one of those. But aside from that, I'll say the ones that have to do with death, and most of the people that approach me do have to do, they do want some guidance and support in their grief journey after the death of a loved one, have been in 2000 and, well, no, let me start. 1996, my sister died in a tragic car accident. She was 18, I was 21. So that was the first time that I really had, yeah, that's Zorana right there. This is actually just, this picture you're sharing was taken that summer in August, right before. That's the last time I saw her in that summer. So she died December of that same year. So she had just graduated from high school. I was 21. I was had moved with my grandmother in California, and this is in the like Venice Beach kind of area. A friend of hers took those pictures. It brings me so much joy to see this. So thank you for sharing that picture that you picked.
Beautiful picture. It's a beautiful picture.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so she was one of those like major. I'm talking about like the ones that were like close in my, in my family. My sister. Then 10 years after her death, we experienced our first pregnancy was a miscarriage. And then 10 years after that was when my mom died. So 1996, my sister, 2006, my first pregnancy, and 2016, my mom. So those are the griefs based on death, aside from, of course, my grandmothers, lots of, friends, all the other types of losses. These are the ones that were related to me.
You just said about identity and the loss of an identity. That is something very profound, especially for a woman when they go from, partner to mother, and then even from mother to to the next stage, where
The empty nesting.
yeah. And it's fascinating because I think that there's a wonderful sense of honoring the space that you show up in. And I think that that's what I was getting a lot from you, is that even in telling them our stories, we honor them. We honor our stories. And like it happened. It's there. This is happening. And I think a lot of times, and I think this kind of goes into our theme today, that as long as you're alive, you might as well. And it's that sense of honoring those moments in time that we all are going through or experiencing. And you spoke to it so beautifully. And like I said, there's always that wonderful message waiting for you if you tune in. Quote for today: I believe life is a series of near misses. A lot of what we ascribe to luck is not luck at all. It's seizing the day, accepting responsibility for your future. It's seeing what other people don't see and pursuing that vision. And I find it fascinating because even in the midst of what is happening to us, when we shift it and try to look at how it's happening for us,
Yeah.
that's when it changes perhaps the game. That wisdom is waiting for us, but we have to have that piece to understand or know. What are your thoughts about this?
The life happening for us.
Yeah.
Was a friend who I actually had on the podcast too. At that moment when I first met her, she was, of course, not my friend, but somebody I met, in an airport, and then we became friends. She had lost both her limbs, and we were talking, we were at baggage claim, and I'm having a conversation with Sarah May. I'll say her name because she's like, and then she's like, da da da, and then she's like, yeah, because of my limbs. And I was like, I did like this double take. I'm like, what are you talking to? And I had not even seen that she had prosthetics, So she's the first, like really the first person in which I heard that phrase of how it hit me differently, of the happens for you. And I know it's in a lot of, probably, religious beliefs as well in that. And in the midst of a situation, a lot of times when people tell you like this things happen for a reason, or it could seem very like it gets in your nerve. Because in that moment when someone says that, it's as if they're not acknowledging your present. You talked about being in the present, and in that moment you don't want to think a lot of times of the why something happened. And a lot of times you really sometimes don't even know. Like you could go your entire life without knowing the reason that something ended up happening, as well. So it's not that every single thing that happens, we will have the answer of the why, but it's the knowing that in some shape or form, it is shaping. I'll use the word shape again here because for lack of a better word, it is shaping who we are becoming. So even if that reason had to do with us shaping us, look at this, like we would not have this book had your mom had not passed away. We would not have my podcast had my mom not passed away. So those were gifts that were brought up because of what we went through or what we lived. So I think things do happen, and there's certain synchronicities. We sometimes don't see them, and it's okay. Sometimes we do. And when we do, we just latch on to that, because that really does help kind of keep you a little stronger for the next day and the next thing and the next thing that might come, later on.
I love that you point that out. One of the things I really find very fascinating about you, and that's really how inspirational that you are, because I find that you show up. You show up to the stage, you show up to the show, you show up in your life. And I've seen this over time because, I've had the privilege of watching you in what you do. I find the work that we show up to in our life is kind of divinely inspired, perhaps. How did this start to gel with you?
You just do the best you can with what you got, kind of thing. In each day, really, there are moments that really we don't feel like showing up like our best selves. There are times, There are times that it does not feel that way. But there's something about a whole day. There's 24 hours. And I remember one time my cousin, who's my baby cousin, and her son, she said that he'd gotten home from school and that he is like, how was your day? He's like, that it was a bad day. It was a bad day. This is just, he'd just been for 2 hours at the preschool, right?
Uh-huh.
And something that she noticed, and we were having this conversation, is that when the preschool teacher was, when the kids are being picked up, it's like, oh yeah, he had a bad day today, and they say that, and you're kind of stuck with a bad day. Bad day was literally probably 10 minutes that it was bad.
Yeah.
Right? A bad little thing. But they automatically handed the child, saying to the parent, yeah, he had a bad day, so he might be a little off. Bad day, maybe somebody took your crayons or whatever, and you already had the worst day. So when we reframe life into really, we have so many moments in our day that are not bad, There's little glimpses of this beauty. Like right now, I'm talking to you, and Evie is one of my dogs is just came right here as I'm petting her. If I were to like focus in a moment, let's say I'm grieving and I'm sad in that moment, and I have this one special moment in it, how can I say I had a bad day when I had so much love in that, even in a moment that I was having a hard time. So that's, I think, how we can reframe our day to day, is like really seeing
I love that.
there's all these seconds that we have in these 24 hours of a day, and how we can find even just a little bit of joy within that.
There was a post by Lewis Howe, and
I love him.
he suggested that in our notes we put, this is the something wonderful that happened to me today, and you put the date and something like on in your phone notes, just to remind you that in those 24 hours, just like you said, you're petting your dog, right? These conversations give light to new inspirational quotes, which you brought to me as well. So I'm going to show them in the stream. And I love these.
And I have to be very honest about it too. When you asked me to send you 2 quotes, and I'm like, which 2 quotes about joy? I literally was like, so what I did, just to be candid with you and your audience, is I chose 2 people that I read often. And I'm like, okay, what did Abdul Baha say about joy? And so I found this quote, and then I did the same with the second quote. So so you know, that's how that came up. And then when I read it, I'm like, yeah, this resonates with me.
Oh, wow. That's pretty awesome. I will say, because they're perfect for the whole concept of reminding how to stay in joy, because the first one says, joy gives us wings. In times of joy, our strength is more vital, our intellect keener, and our understanding less clouded. We seem better able to cope with the world and to find our spirit of usefulness. That's Abdul Baha, and that's Paris Talks. So tell me what this means to you, because it really does give us wings when you feel that elation, for sure.
It's just like, again, it just, you hold on. I just texted someone earlier today, like, that had gone through a grief experience just recent. I just said, you'll feel grief, but you'll also feel a lot of love around you. Hold on to that as your anchor, during that time. So for us, we just hold on to whatever it is. And if it's those little glimpses of joy in the moment, hold on to that, so that's the part, I think, of the wings. And it just, um the part of keener, it's interesting how in this quote, it's talking about joy making like our perception even keener.
Yeah.
I actually think that also of grief, which could seem the complete opposite. But if you can tell me if you agree with me or not, but when you're in the midst of grief, your senses are so like in high alert. Like, I remember how light just, everything looked brighter. The sounds were more, I could see, I don't know, more of the world when I'd go outside. And, do you remember?
Yeah, no, I will say that the funny thing you pointed that out is like the wind. You see the wind in the trees, you see
Yeah.
the leaves move differently. I totally agree.
Yeah, you're like present.
Yeah.
You're present. And so I think that in that same way, because joy and grief can be
Yeah.
in the same, we can't, we, we, we're sad for something that brought us a lot of joy or a lot of
Yeah.
love, right? When we're grieving. And so they can go hand in hand. So it's interesting that this one has that perspective of it making life kind of, keener, as I believe grief also does. For me, it's just the reality that we are not this. For me, that belief that this life here and our physical being is just a portion of our existence. It's just a vehicle of our existence. That is really what I hold on to, so that our true reality, being more of that spiritual nature,
Mm.
is something that I tend to try to gear my energy towards,
Yeah.
so that the things that happen on this plane don't end up weighing on me so much, because literally it's a blink of an eye.
With me is when you're joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it's only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Khalil Gibran. Wow. I'm getting people have been dropping Khalil Gibran quotes to me left and right lately. So I guess,
Oh, Khalil.
there's a
Yeah,
message
it's
here.
like when I was in my teens, my dad had that book, The Prophet by Khalil
Oh,
Gibran.
yeah.
And so there would be like poetry festivals and stuff. And I'm like at school and I'm like, oh, can I read a Khalil Gibran? I was like, it was not really poetry, but it sounded, anytime I would read one of them, I'm like, oh. So even in in our wedding, we read two of the Khalil Gibran things, one on love and one on marriage. The one on children is amazing. I love that one too. And so I was like, oh, that was the other author. I'm like, oh, I want to see, what does Khalil Gibran say about joy?
Yeah.
And it is so true. Like when we are joy, like when you lose your job, let's say, you are sorrow, you feel sorrow because it was something that brought you joy, it brought you. And so then if you had lost something that was really bad, like you probably wouldn't be, that didn't, that was not that joyful, you probably wouldn't be that sad, right?
They'd be like
So
happy. You're like, woo, freedom.
yeah, there might, yeah, it's even like when I've had situations in which people have gone through divorce. And there was one time I say to this lady, I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know, when she says like, oh no, I'm so happy. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I just learned a lesson. I have to ask, how do you feel about that first?
Yeah. Yeah, you're like, it could be a whole different experience. And you're like, why are you crying for
Yeah,
me?
I'm
I'm
so
so
happy.
excited. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, I've learned my lesson. I'll ask, how do you feel about that
Yeah.
before I share my my two cents.
I love at the end it says, delight, the whole idea of delight, the concept of delight. And I think that that is certainly another synonym for joy, right? The
And
whole
bliss,
experience.
I think it sounds a lot. I think delight also has this feeling of
Yes.
bliss too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something that like even saying it makes you feel better for sure. For you, I think that I would love to hear what was one of the most profound lessons that has positively impacted your life and the life of your family. I mean, I have to show this beautiful picture of your mom. I think that, the gift is that she's clearly watching over you and that she has the best for you because all of these experiences you said would never have come to light had it not been for the loss. Tell me, what is I mean, from something that was devastating to something that has positively impacted your life and the life of your family.
I mean, it's hard to think of one thing
Yeah.
because I get every single one of the things that we've gone through that has been hard in some shape or form has made then life what is now. I even tell the kids when I first told them um, that I had been pregnant before, or that they had an older sibling. They were probably maybe 6 and 7 around that time.
Yeah.
And it's because I have this stuffed animal that Carlos, my husband, brought home when I was pregnant with our first child, that he brought it for the baby and brought me flowers. when we had the miscarriage, I slept with that cow
Oh,
and actually slept through it when I was pregnant with my son Mateo. And when he was born, that's what he has. You know, he's almost 18 years old. That's his lovey, is this cow that was originally
oh wow.
for their older sibling, right? So
Amazing.
that just even that little simple thing that first of all, my two children would not be here. Life wouldn't look like what it looks like now had we not been through a miscarriage, right? These two beings that are here, as Mateo and Mila in our life, are here.
Yeah.
I don't know what it would have looked like otherwise. I don't know, right? But this is just the story that it was. With my mom's passing, another thing that impacted us, of course, it was the first time my children were really experiencing death of a loved. It was the first person in their life that died. And them having been able to be there and witness her taking her last breath and really seeing that way and how death was lived in our family, I feel it impacted their lives because it also took a little bit of that, fear away of what it looks like to die, and how we have a choice of how it is we react. So that's another, let's say, blessing that you could see, is that we've kind of experienced something together that was really hard.
Question coming back to you. What is your intention for today's interview, and what page in the Magical Guide to Bliss would that be matching?
So it's so funny because when you told me you had sent even questions for today
Yes.
that I didn't know until we started to record, I was like, and actually I'm not going to read them because I just wanted it to be present. Well, I did the same then with the page. I thought of a number, but I have not read it yet. I just thought of a number that means. So my intention was definitely honoring my mom and my sister, but these little magical things that sometimes, I know butterflies are something for you, and for me, like, sometimes numbers would show up that would connect me with my mom. So the one that would connect me with my mom, that shows up anytime I see the time of day, even if I see it backwards on my clock, when it's 6:16, I see it 9:19 is the number.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, there's not 919 pages.
No.
So I'll either choose the number 9 or I'll choose the number 19. So 19 will be the number.
Okay.
So do I open it or do you do it?
You do it. You do it. You do it.
Okay.
Do it.
Here's 19. But the cool thing is that it's January, and my mom's birthday was January 20th, but this one's January 17th, the one under. Okay. Something great awaits you. Oh. Life is a process. We are a process. The universe is a process. Ann Wilson. Ann Wilson, and I do not want to pronounce Shaif. I love that you start each section with a quote. Yeah. Life. Do you want me to read the whole thing?
Read whatever speaks to you. What part
okay,
of it?
Well, let's see. I'll do like the first paragraph and see, because again, I did not practice. Life is a process that unfolds before you. It is how you approach the process that dictates the experience, and that is why trust is so important. While trust itself is defined as an assured reliance on character, ability, strength, or truth, or someone or something, it can be incredibly dualistic concept. On one hand, to trust in life can seem challenging when you are struggling to surrender control. Yet on the other hand, to trust in life can feel like a breath of fresh air as you ultimately release into a freedom that brings great peace. I think that is actually what we've just been talking about, even just all the time, even just today. Well, first off, we ended up having to deal with trusting a process today. And we have to trust a process when we go through something hard. And that aspect of releasing and just really be, just kind of letting go and then just seeing what comes of it is also this element of trust. So I love it.
I think that as we grow, we live, we learn, we become more extraordinary. And I think that that is why I'd like to highlight people like you, because you become more extraordinary as you keep going through those moments that are hell. Like I always say, would love for you to share with us today, you know, how do you make a difference in life to bring real change to, you know, to you, to your family? And I'm going to put up here a beautiful picture of your family because they are literally, you know,
Thank you.
huge
My
in your
little
life.
pups. I know this one's a couple of years old. I know. Look at my pups; they're part of our family. So I think that it can be really challenging. I remember that my kids would sometimes say this one, especially when they were little, "Mom, how come you're always so happy with everybody else, and to us you're always like da, da, da,
Yes.
da, da, da,"
Yes.
right? So we may not always be the best example sometimes in our own home
Yeah.
of how it is we portray ourselves in the outside world, right? It's a reality. A lot of times I'm like, oh, well, because you guys don't listen to me kind of thing when they were little, right? I'd be like, but really it's like there's such small little things that we can do. Something that for me, for example, is important is saying somebody's name when I'm at a restaurant or when I'm, like if I'm at a restaurant and the server, if they don't, sometimes they come in and they say, "Hi, I'm Anne and I will be your server." Sometimes they don't. They're like, "How can I take your turn?" So like, "Thank you. What's your name?" And so then they say your name, like, and then you're like, "Oh, thank you." And I just repeat their name back to them. And, and it just feels that you're being seen and connected. So that's something very little, but that I think can mean a lot to that person to be seen
Oh, that's
for
beautiful.
who they are. It's anything in the checkout stand, thank you, thank you. And the
I
same with the
love it.
bagger. Just saying the name of the person that is serving you in that moment in the, the checkout and in the reception office on the phone. When I call customer service for anything, I try, "Can you repeat your name? I want to make sure I got it." I'm like, "Oh, thank you so and so." You know, it is, I think that it is important as we are so busy in our day that we just are so focused on ourselves and in our own little worlds. It kind of breaks it. And for a person that's like constantly serving other people and they're not even seen, I think it means a lot when you say their name. So that's
It's
a
it's so
small one.
small, but it's so powerful.
And
I just imagine that connection. And then, you know, it's interesting because when you acknowledge somebody by virtue of their name, there is that we already interconnected. Our energy is
yeah.
passed through. But that's just such a profound moment in time. I love that. I
And
love
it's
that.
not conscious. I didn't know that it was something that people didn't do by the way. It was somebody that told me one time, it's like, "Hey, I noticed you've already asked the name of 3 people today." I was like,
I love that.
"Is that not what everybody does?" I literally was only like probably a year ago that this happened. I was like, "Isn't that what everybody does?" Like,
You know, there's so much here. You are an intuitive guide for grievers. You are that. You offer that service as well to people if they need someone to walk with them, which I think is so amazingly profound. So before you do your inspiration, tell us a little bit about that offering that you have as well as an intuitive grieving guide.
yeah, thank you, Meg. So I think that like a lot of times when we're going through something, one, when we're grieving, especially if it's the first time we've experienced a major loss, we
Yeah.
don't even know if everything that we're feeling is normal. Like, so to have someone validate that what you're going through is normal
Yes.
and how you're expressing it is normal, and that there's no right or wrong way of grieving, that is really partly what I do. The other part too, and I've told her, when I'm coaching somebody, it's like those words coach, I'm not, it's really literally just walking alongside. It's being a sounding board is what I like. It's like you just say the word coach because people can sometimes can relate to that, or guide or whatever, but it's really being a sounding board. But when I'm meeting with someone, is that there's nothing to fix in
Yeah.
grief. We're not
That's
here
so
to,
true.
there's
Oh my
nothing to
goodness.
fix. Nothing to fix. We are literally just living it, experiencing it, figuring out what tools we already have in our own toolbox
Mhm.
that we can incorporate to aid us in the process of grieving, and how can we integrate grief into our life in a way that brings us a little bit more lightness and joy
Wow.
and purpose, and then just you just carry on. So it's
Well,
like
and most importantly, how can people contact you if they're looking for that kind of support? Like, where can they go to find you?
yeah, you can go to the website. I don't have like I don't have my packages on there because literally each one's very individually
Right.
catered to what it is your needs are. But please don't ever hesitate to like email me or ask on the
So
website.
please share with us an inspiration today. I know the world is like many people who are suffering in silence, and I personally think that, like I said before, you are one of those sunshiny people. So, what is an inspiration you can offer all of us?
I think that just be present, acknowledge that what you're feeling about the world, about your life, about whatever is going on in your day to day is valid. But you do have a choice. You have a choice as to how it is you want to channel the type of energy you want to bring. So if you want to focus on the despair, be my guest, but it was just gonna just bring you down more.
Yeah.
So, try to shift it. And again, by shifting and looking something to be grateful for, looking something to be joyful for, looking for something that you love, finding things you love and to do things that you love and pray and even sharing these things online. I love when you share your posts about your daughter and her singing. It brings me so much joy, so do that because it is okay to share that. It doesn't mean you're not feeling these other emotions in your life. It is okay to share the joy. And we tend to sometimes dim our joy down and our
Oh,
uh,
that's so
our,
true.
our achievements. We dim them down sometimes because like, no, maybe it's going to be disrespectful to somebody else that may be feeling. I know I do that. So a lot of times I'm like, how am I going to share this if somebody's feeling this way? And when I do that, it's as if I'm stagnating my own voice, and it just feels more drowning than if I just share.
Yeah.
So just share these little glimpses of magic that happen in your day to day, whether it's with the world, if you want to do it like we do with podcasts, or if you are on your Facebook lives, or just share it with someone you love over a phone call. Share a little glimpse of magic and of joy. It really does shift everything in your day.
I love that. I love you. I love what you offer the world, and I'm so grateful that you are in it. So, with that, I love that you're going to say to everyone today, share what you want, because I think that, I think it invites people into that whole like wonderful dance of life, right? And that going back to our theme today, as long as you're alive, you might as well. And I think that that is something that only can be poured from us. Might as well you complete the sentence and, like you said, share whatever that is that's calling to you, and that will help us all stay in joy. Last word goes to you, my friend, because I always offer this space to you. But yes, other than gratitude for you being here with me today, go for it.
Oh my goodness. Well, I don't really have very little to say now. I think this has been just such a joy of a conversation. And you yourself are a joy of light as well, Meg. Like I know we've connected because we have just, well, one, because you lived in Colombia at some point, and two, in your life, which is where I'm originally from. And that was one of our point of connection. But actually, even just that, I'll say about that. Know that with every human being, every living being, there's some way of connecting. You
Oh,
just have to dig a little deeper. And when you do find that, it brings you so much joy too. When you find that little sense of like, oh my gosh, we have this in common. Oh, we like the same latte at such a place. Oh, simple things.
oh my God. That
So
is
I love
absolutely
it.
perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Yes, keep digging. You'll find something you'll like
Yes.
about everybody for sure. And with that, I do encourage all of you to go check out Kendra's wonderful podcast and reach out to her. She is a joy. And Resonate continues. And thank you so much, Kendra.
Thank you, Meg.
All right. Good night, everybody.